welcome everybody to, what day is today? Tuesday. John, we're going to have, there's so much to talk about. Oh, by the way, we're going to go there in just a second. My guest today is the great John Haller. We're going to have a terrific time, as you're about ready to find out. But I got to let you know about two things that are coming up. Check this out. On Monday, so a week from yesterday, on Monday, I think it's the 17th of June, Shay, the founder of Got Questions, is going to be my guest. And this is totally cool. You guys are going to be blown away. That's coming Monday, 2 o'clock on Pacific time at Hope for Our Time. Shay from Got Questions. Just a real blessing to be able to have someone like him on. You're going to be blown away. On Tuesday, June 25th, mark your calendar, I will be at Pastor Joe Pettick's church, Calvary Chapel of Huntington Harbor in Huntington Beach, California, with Don Stewart. So those are two things. I'll keep letting you know about those two things. Again, Shay is on Monday. By the way, prophecy update coming this Sunday night. All right, John Haller is joining me. Thank you, John, for joining me. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Ready to go. I heard there were some things happening.
Just a little bit. Hunter Biden's been found guilty, which we'll get into if we have time. I think it's just a ruse. But anyways, Russia and the new Cuban Missile Crisis. So, what were you going to say something about Hunter before we go to the important
let's just take the trash out early, I guess.
I love that. Let's go for it.
I'm wearing my early warning shirt today.
I love it. Take the trash out.
So I'm going to do symbolic dressing. So I have an orange shirt that I wear occasionally, and that means that I'm working on constructing charts or something like that. But today it says it's an early warning device that a lot of things are happening. So look, on Hunter, so there's a difference between Hunter and Trump. And you're going to see, it took the jury 3 hours, and the jury convicted Trump of many more things in the same amount of time. And so, I'm sure I can almost hear the MSNBC talking heads prattling on tomorrow morning about it on Morning Joe. But there's a big difference. Hunter was convicted in federal court. And I've always thought that this was like a useless exercise. And I can guarantee you that after the election, if Trump wins, immediately after the election, he's going to be pardoned by his father. And he'll never serve a minute in jail. You might as well just assume that. And if Biden wins the election, then he has no reason not to do it politically, so he'll do it. If he wins the election, he'll do it anyway. So I doubt that Hunter Biden will ever serve a minute in jail based on these convictions. Trump is much different, because even if Trump got elected, I think he could probably pardon himself of federal crimes, but he was convicted in state court. And so he's going to have to go through that appeal process and exhaust all of those appeals before he tried to go to federal. And I just think that it's going to be pretty difficult for him to overcome the conviction in state court. Might get some traction in federal court. And his sentencing is coming up July 11th. So watch this space, because he may end up getting sentenced to prison.
Well, I think that's realistically what's probably going to happen. And personally, I think this whole thing with Hunter, it wouldn't have. I just don't trust our government from what I've seen, and I look at it thinking it's so easy now for the left to say, look, we treated Trump fairly because we did this to Hunter, and it's for me, that's what they're going to be saying. See, it's all been fair. We aren't a favor to either one side or the other. This is the current president's own son. If we only did this against Don Jr. or against Eric, this kind of stuff is going to be the talking points on the MSNBCs and CNNs and everywhere else.
Yeah, and look, Hunter, I think the most important thing that came out of the trial was that there was testimony from an FBI person to authenticate Hunter Biden's laptop. which if you remember, in fact, if you can, go to an app called pressdisplay.com or pressreader.com and check the front page of today's Washington or New York Post. And it has a picture of all of the 58 security, national intelligence, CIA directors who came out and said that the Hunter Biden laptop was made up Russian disinformation. It was authenticated by the FBI, which we don't really trust that much anymore anyway, but it was authenticated as this was Hunter Biden's laptop. Some of those guys like Clapper have been interviewed on television and said, well, you said that it was fake and they won't change their opinion.
Right.
So in Washington, lying means you never have to, even when you're caught literally with your pants down and on fire, you don't have to change your opinion. Yeah. That's Washington, D.C.
Yeah, they've got the power to be able to do whatever they want, lie whenever they want, and they never have to suffer any consequences or anything.
And it's likely that letter that those 58 intelligence people sent back in 2016, just literally a month before the election, was persuasive in changing the election results. So, or
2020.
It could have. I'm sorry, it was 2020. It could have changed. It likely changed the election results when that letter was released back in 2020, just before the election. Sorry, I kind of get my Russian disinformation psyops messed up. I have trouble keeping them. I need to have a scorecard, or I have too many Post-it notes for the lies that we're told. I can't keep them straight anymore.
So many. I want to get to Russia and Cuba if we have time.
Okay.
So, and we can come back to Hunter if we have to, only if we have to. But I don't think so, because there's so many stories about Israel that are unbelievably, I don't know. I look at this, check this out. So these hostages are rescued. It was a rescue. I'm watching nonsense all over the media. It is everywhere. Look how many people were killed. The numbers are way exaggerated. They're lying. They aren't correct or any of that. And now
I actually think they might be accurate. The last number I saw was 298 killed and about 700 wounded.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. But I mean, what I'm looking at is the ridiculousness of people saying, hey, if there was a ceasefire, these hostages would have been returned. I mean, what a bunch of nonsense. October 7 happened during a ceasefire. The ones honoring the ceasefire was Israel. So, right. I mean, we know how the ceasefires have always gone. So this is out of the UN, John. Security Council adopts U.S. resolution calling for immediate, full, and complete ceasefire. U.S. ceasefire.
This is, everything in this whole thing is a lie. By the way, just a reminder, everybody, tomorrow night, Tom and I are going to interview Dr. Francisco Gil White. And I don't think he's a Christian, by the way, but he's a historian, and he's written a lot on anti-Semitism, the Palestinian issue. And so we're going to talk mainly about the Palestinian Authority history and the history of Fatah, the parties that they want to take over. I think you'll really want to watch it. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, streaming. As far as I know, it'll stream live.
That's on John's channel, by the way. So, John, how can people watch that watch it live?
Go to Fellowship Bible Chapel. I'll post on my Twitter and Facebook, and usually John Haller 54 is where I can be found, and True Social and Getter. Link to that sometime today, where you can watch it. But just go to Fellowship Bible Chapel YouTube channel, click on the live tab, and you'll see it tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, so real quick question on him. He was in Venezuela previously, was it? Where was he?
Mexico. He lives in Mexico.
He lives in Mexico now?
He lives in Mexico now. He was a professor in the Philadelphia area, but lost his tenure track position because of him speaking out about the Israeli Palestinian issue, not in a way that was not accepted. So he's paid the consequences for it. His father was, I think, a finance minister under the Vicente Fox administration in Mexico. And if we have time, I'm going to try to ask him a question about this lunatic that they elected president in Mexico last week.
Yeah.
This radical leftist, pro-Hamas, and Jewish lady, secular Jewish lady. It's Tom. I've heard Don Stewart say this. I've heard you say it. I've heard Jan say it. You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
By the way, somebody sent me a picture from, the Economist cover that kind of predicts what things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And in the one, there's a lady with a ponytail that looks remarkably like this lady. I have to dig that cover out.
I see that. Well, as soon as I didn't know who she was until like 2 days ago. I've been and I'm looking into it and I'm going, oh my gosh, this woman is wicked. She's a full-on globalist. I don't know if she was part of the school of Klaus Schwab's young global leaders or not, but she fits the perfect criteria for whatever Mexico had. This is worse than anything they've had.
Tom, there's a synergy going on here too, because she's a globalist, right? And what are the globals going to be? Now, we all talk about how these 10 kingdoms are going to come together, and there's the Club of Rome map that had North America Union put together, sort of like the North American Union would be one of the 10 kings under the Club of Rome thing. And we've all talked about it in different conferences. There's a synergy going on here that I think a lot of people miss. In September of 1993, I went down to DC to do some depositions. I arrived on September 13th and I was there on the 14th. I finished my depositions on the 13th, but too late to get home. So I stayed over, and that morning I went down and I actually went to the office of a friend of mine, a Jewish, very liberal Jewish friend that I went to high school with. He went to Harvard undergrad, Yale Law. His dad was high up in Democratic politics in the state of Pennsylvania. So he had been elected to Congress in the Clinton election in 92. So this is about a year later, September 93. The day before, Sam had been over at the White House with 3,000 other witnesses, which is kind of an interesting biblical number, where they signed the Oslo Accords. Clinton,
Yasser
Arafat, Mahmoud Abbas was there, and Itzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres. Clinton made them shake hands and all of this stuff. And it's interesting, if you go and watch, there's an ABC very long video that you can find on YouTube about this, and it's all the same people. They're all still here. It's all the same people.
That is interesting. I find that interesting. I've looked at that and gone, wow, these people have been around a long time.
Yeah,
and now they're kids.
Pretty old. Yeah, a few of them have died, like Kissinger. They finally, he finally, I guess his, whatever it was, he was taken, finally his prescription ran out. And he died last year at 100. Zbigniew Brzezinski, he passed on. But it's a lot of the same people that are involved right now. And it's the same thing that we're being pushed. So to your point about what's going on at the UN, it's Oslo on steroids. Again, they're still pushing the same nonsense. Hamas doesn't want a two-state solution. By the way, they don't want a one-state solution in Palestine. They want an Islamic caliphate to rule the world. But the interesting thing is, so they have Oslo one day in September 1993. The next morning, while I was waiting for Sam, I went down to the Ways and Means hearing room, and there was Robert Reich, and I don't remember who the Treasury Secretary was. I sat right behind him at the hearing. They were talking about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And now this lady's elected to office in Mexico, and you know that this is her agenda. So it's sort of like if you had fallen asleep 30 years ago and woke up 2 weeks ago, you'd be up to speed on the major issues of the day.
Yeah, including climate nonsense, lies. I mean, you can go right on through everything, and it is truly amazing. John, back in the 1970s in high school, I was in an ecology class, and I had to take a science class, right? And it was ecology, and I remember seeing the climate stuff they were pushing way back then. Of course, I think we were going to all freeze back then.
Earth Day.
But I mean, it's amazing, and it is the same voices. Some of them are literally the same people, like you mentioned, and the same stuff, the exact same Earth Day, the same things they talk about over and over. And Israel's been at the forefront since Israel's existed, and nothing's ever changed with Israel in the sense of they're still God's chosen people. And it's like the world wants to kill them. And I was reading Psalm 129 this morning. Basically, the world wants to kill all of Israel, but God is their protector, is what the psalmist wrote.
Yep.
All right.
So anyway, so it's like everything's being recycled. It's like, and so now we're 30 years, just a little over 30 years after Oslo, and we're still talking about it like it's actually going to happen. And I ran across a video the other night of Golda Meir. She was talking about, well, they say they want to return to the 1967 borders. But we had the 1967 borders in 1967, and we had a war.
Yeah, what a joke. Yeah. I thought about that so many times. So that didn't work out.
Yeah.
You just look at the absurd things. Okay, let's talk about what's going on in the North. The North is a much, much, much larger problem than Gaza. And all this pressure is against Israel coming from the U.S. and everywhere else. You need to just lay down your arms and they'll return. I mean, the lies are just off the charts. I praise God for the 4 hostages that were rescued, not returned. They were rescued. You got a, what was it, a journalist who was also a Hamas terrorist keeping one of the hostages?
No, they were civilians, Tom. They were civilians that were holding these people. And the guy was the one guy, the son, there was a father-son. The son is an Al Jazeera journalist. And again, here's the phrase, you can't make this stuff up. Yeah. And the father is a physician. So Carolyn Glick she did a video about it yesterday. I think you should go watch it. And she sort of talks about that this is about the 4th instance where physicians or doctors in Gaza have been directly involved with Hamas. And in fact, I'm sort of quoting Carolyn because I was kind of listening to it while I was doing something else. So if I get this wrong, I apologize. My recollection is that one of the people kidnapped on October 7th was taken to a hospital alive in Gaza for treatment, and the doctor shot and killed her.
Jeez. And
they found her body later in one of the Israeli operations. She had bullet wounds all through her body. And they're pretty sure that was done by a doctor. And I went to Christ at the Checkpoint once, and I sat next to a physician. Look, he's a very nice guy. He's very intelligent. He's now a cancer surgeon in Toronto, and I can't remember his name. If you just Google doctor who lost 3 daughters in a explosion in Gaza about 15 years ago, it's this guy. And I sat and had dinner with him at Christ at the Checkpoint. And Tom, it was like talking to a wall, because I asked him questions. And there was a Methodist pastor couple, male couple, in the Palestinian kafia sitting across the table from us. And their mouths, I don't think they ate anything that night. They were their mouths were open at the questions I was asking the guy, because I asked him, I go to Jordan, I see refugee. Well, at first I said in Nablus, there's Balata, there's a refugee camp. Oh, it's horrible. Why is that? He said, it's the occupation. I said, but doctor, this was during the 70th anniversary of the 1948 war when we were having this dinner, 2018. And I said, but it's been there for 70 years, and I walk around look around the neighborhood around the refugee camp, and it's all these modern apartment buildings and homes. Why are the people still in the refugee camp after 70 years? Oh, John, it's the occupation. It's the occupation. And I said, okay, so there are other ones in Israel that I've seen, refugee camps, but I went to Jordan and I saw refugee camps in Jordan. Jordan hasn't been occupied by Israel. What's up with those? The occupation.
That's right.
I said one of the worst places on earth is Yarmouk refugee camp in Damascus. Why is one of the most densely populated places on the planet? Why are they still there after 70 years? Oh, it's the occupation, John. It's the occupation. I'm like, it just doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
When they talk about it.
That's what, I'm watching some videos of some of these Hamas people. The spokesman the other day was praising Allah for all of the civilians that are killed because it helps them in their propaganda fight. And then he promises them all, you're going to achieve whatever you achieve because they all died, but it helps them to win the propaganda war. So they love it. The more civilian deaths they have, the more they can put them into schools or wherever else, the better. And you can blame Israel. It's the occupation, it's the occupation, it's the occupation.
Or accuse them of using them civilians as shields. And oh my goodness, how dare you make such an evil accusation? Yeah. And so, Hania came out and said, well, this is just a terrible, terrible thing that happened. And they killed our people. And I have to tell you, I really have no sympathy for it. I'm sorry. They were wrong. I think David Friedman, former ambassador to Israel from the United States, said today, says, what did you expect? You think we're just going to let them go? I love the one. I think it was Jonathan Conricus, the former IDF spokesperson, being interviewed on BBC. And she said, well, shouldn't you have given an early warning to the people holding them that you're coming in to take the hostages back?
I saw that.
She actually asked that question.
I saw that. I thought this is just one of the dumbest questions that can be asked, but this is how idiotic these people are. So you're going to go say, hey, we're coming to get the hostages. We're going to go into this building so you can, kill the hostages or move everybody? I mean, it's just idiotic. Totally, these people are idiots, but they're such leftist tools at the same time. And I saw that, and in fact, I'm saving that. I think I'm going to use that.
And one of the arguments is there's a gal who is on Twitter called Partisan Girl. She is one of the most vile, disgusting human beings ever. But she's saying, well, look at their pictures. Look how well fed they are. Look how well fed, look how well taken care of these hostages were. To which everybody is responding, hey, wait a minute. I thought you said everybody in Gaza was starving.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't, they don't even keep track of their own lies and propaganda.
You see the videos of the people of Gaza on the beaches. While at the same time they're saying, there's missiles flying everywhere here and they're killing us all. They don't seem to be having that much of a problem going on with their lives.
Yeah. So anyway, the whole thing is insane. I think we started to talk about the North.
Let's go up north because the North is very concerning.
So I've interviewed a guy named Avraham Levine a couple times from Alma Research. Alma was founded, 10 or 15 years ago after the Second Lebanon War by Zarit Zahavi. And I did see somebody shared a conversation that they had with Zarit, the founder and leader of Alma Research. Israel-alma.org is the website. And she said, I in the conversation, she was asked a question. Okay, Zarit, what's Hezbollah's battle plan for northern Israel? And she said this, and this was very frightening. She said it was the battle plan that Hezbollah has had for the north is what Hamas executed in Gaza. Coming across the border, killing people in their beds, killing people in their safe rooms, taking hostages, coming through the tunnels. She also said that whatever tunnel system was in Gaza, originally thought to be about 300 miles, is now over 500 or 600 miles of tunnels, more deeply embedded than anybody imagined. 50 tunnels at the Philadelphia corridor, the border between Egypt and Gaza. By the way, and the goods being smuggled through there are under the control of Bedouin tribes in the Negev, and they are giving a cut to President al-Sisi, the president of Egypt's son. So there's a big economic interest there. I've read that Hamas has made $500 million profits stealing aid and reselling it since October 7th. That's a tremendous amount of money for them.
That's a heck of a lot of money.
But whatever tunnel system they have in Gaza is much more extensive in southern Lebanon. And the tunnels probably go all the way from the Lebanon border to Beirut. And so their goal is that they know that Israel, when the war starts, take the pictures of Gaza and make them worse in terms of destruction. This is what Israel will do in southern Lebanon if they have the political will to do it. And it's what they need to do. They will turn it into Gaza squared and crush it. But the whole plan is the same plan that Hamas has. We'll survive in the tunnels underground, and then we will emerge later and get our victory. Mm-hmm. You will completely destroy the country, but we will survive, and we will come back, and we will set up our caliphate.
So, okay, now also the tunnels up north, I mean, you've got them in bedrock.
They're in bedrock,
so
right.
You have it's huge. I don't think people understand also that the amount of weapons that Hezbollah has, they're the most well-funded terrorist organization on the whole planet. They can launch up to how many missiles and rockets? Because they have both. They have missiles. Hamas didn't have missiles. They have rockets, and there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, they have missiles with good guidance systems. They can reach anywhere in Israel.
So how many a day?
I mean, to a lot. Rockets and missiles, 150,000, but I don't think that includes drones. Now they've fired 5,000 since October 7th. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, my red alert goes off every day. I'm sure it's gone off just while we're sitting here.
It's constant with barrages in the north. And I had a friend up there in the Golan yesterday. I think he was up around Katsrina and went out for a rock, and there was a barrage of missiles that went overhead, all intercepted by Iron Dome. But some are starting to get through. Iron Dome's not going to be perfect. They're trying to get Iron Beam online. I don't know how close they are to getting that. That's the laser one that's much cheaper. But, look, so let's assume there were 40, 50 rockets fired yesterday, and they were all taken out by Iron Dome. Well, that's millions of dollars of missiles to take out lousy rockets and drones.
Right. It's what?
50? And there's an economic war going on there too, to bleed them. Well, so in Tehran, there's a square called Palestinian Square. And by the way, in Farsi, it transliterates to Philistine Square. Philistine Square. That's kind of interesting. And same thing, by the way, in Istanbul, when they talk about Palestinians, it's Philistinians in the Turkish language.
Very interesting.
And because that's what it is, that's what it was for. But in Tehran, they had a bunch of rockets in Palestine Square. This is probably 3 months ago. You can still find the pictures online. It was in the Tehran Times, and it said, "Are you ready for 2 million displaced persons. And what it was telling Israel what they intend to do. So right now there are, I've heard 40, 80, 100,000 people in the north have left their homes, moved away from their homes. The villages, Kiryat Shimona and other villages, have been completely trashed by these Hamas rockets and missiles and drones. But Tehran is saying through its newspapers, are you ready for 2 million people to be displaced? And that's, to them, that's a victory, a major victory, because Israel's back on its heels, and those people have been out of their homes now for 8 months.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. Listen, I want to ask you several questions here, John, about what some more things that I see concerning about up north, which you just commented on, because there's more there. But listen, everybody, I just want to ask you if you would like, subscribe, and share this program. It's the only way we can get the word out. It's free to do that. If you would, please just join us in that. And also, when you go to John's channel, same thing. We literally, it doesn't go out unless you guys share it. You know, share it with 1 people, share it with 2 people, share it with 10 people. But it is the way that we get the word out, both here at Hope for Our Times and on John's channel. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you doing that. So, John, when I look at this, 2 million people. You know, I was there not too long ago. I'll be going there pretty soon too. Brandon, he's up there. I think he just arrived today. In fact, when I was with Brandon, we were watching all of the people that were displaced. When we had a tour group, we were there. They're everywhere. These people. So the tour group was in March, and it was great being able to talk with them. But they were heartbroken. They wanted to go back home, and they can't. All right, that's 80,000 people. 2 million, and you could tell the effect it's having on everything. You displaced 2 million people. That I don't know. That is, how can Israel, as small of a country as it is, deal with that? I mean, that is unbelievable. So Iran knows exactly what they're doing in that.
At least 2 million would be 1/4 of the population of the country displaced.
How can you accommodate that? I mean, we're talking jobs lost. That's more people not working again, more food problems, more shelter problems. I mean, everything is just going to escalate from where it is right now to where it's going. And also, I think I shared this with you when I was in the Old City. This is also in March. I got a cab ride from one of the Arabs that were there at Jaffa, and he said I was his first customer since October 7th. That hasn't changed. You know, that this is still going on. And what they're talking about, the threats against Israel, we're going to wear you down, plus the amount of money, which you mentioned, this is an economic war too, the amount of money for Iron Dome to shoot down 1 rocket or 1 missile. It's what, 50,000 per?
It's around 50,000, maybe shot. A little bit more, but yeah.
So don't you think that's a lot of what's going on right now with Hamas? Not just the terror aspect of it, but we're just going to exhaust Israel's economy. We have the Biden administration demanding a ceasefire and saying we're not going to give you any ammunition. So we have this squeeze that's being put on Israel from all these different angles.
Yeah. So, you think about, remember they talked about the cost of to stop Iran's drone missile attack back in April, about 2 months ago. It was in the millions and millions and millions of dollars. But Hamas, that was 300 things coming in, missiles and drones. Hamas can do, I heard another lady, her name is Miri Eisen. She's the director of the Institute on Counterterrorism at Reichman University. And she's a liberal, by the way. She's all for a 2-state. So, good luck with that one. But she just said, if this happens, Hamas can do 5,000 a day for weeks.
Hezbollah,
I'm sorry. Yeah. Hezbollah, 5,000 a day. That's 5,000 compared to 3,000. And then she also said, and you will have for at least 10 days, I think she said, 500 dead Israelis every day. And so the question is, what do you do to fight that and counter that? Now, look, I think Israel will prevail. I think we have that promise, but that doesn't mean that it does not prevail without a lot of pain.
Right. Well, go ahead.
Well, and I was thinking, I saw an article that a friend posted today. I think it came from Israel 365, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that I read there, but it's talking about some of the rabbis that, it might be Talmudic references to the war of Gog and Magog, about that Galilee will be destroyed. I mean, it talks about that.
Well, okay, so when you look at Psalm 83, I had Bill Salas on a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
The way I read, Bill was on, but we were talking about the destruction of Damascus with Isaiah chapter 17. The way I read that, I still think it's future. I know Bill does too.
I do.
Okay, so when you look at it, yes, Israel has a significant victory, but they also take huge losses in the north. And I look and go, what is coming for Israel? You already have the world turning against her, but there's a lot of pain and suffering that's coming. And I think, I look at this, and we have to deal with all the rhetoric of the anti-Semitism that comes from pastors and even people on the right now. Unbelievable, but it is suffering. So when you look at Galilee, that's the north. For anybody who's never been there before, that's the Golan Heights comes right up near the edge of the Sea of Galilee. It's very close to it. So,
well, but it also says this, like we this is something we do in Bible prophecy stuff, is we always cite the good stuff that we kind of like and are bored with, but then we kind of sort of mumble over the other. And so when you look at Isaiah 17, we all know about the destruction of Damascus, but that's not the whole story there.
Yeah.
The cities of Ar are forsaken, verse 2, they shall be for flocks. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus. So that means
that's northern Israel.
It sounds like Syria is going to fall, but Ephraim is really kind of became synonymous with the northern kingdom of Israel. Mm-hmm. So Samaria and Galilee. And so when the rabbis are looking at what it says about Ezekiel 38, 39 and Isaiah 17 and stuff, they say Galilee's going to be destroyed.
Well, also so we take, let's go back to the Hezbollah equation with 5,000 missiles a day, missiles and rockets, all missiles. Israel cannot defend itself with the Iron Dome against that. There's no way. You look, if Damascus is going to be destroyed, Israel, in fact, I had this conversation this morning with my wife. I said, I believe Israel's going to have to take things to another level for their own protection, and this could very well be what launches Isaiah chapter 17. I don't know, but Israel can't just stand by and take 5,000 hits a day like that. Nobody can. No country. United States wouldn't even take one rocket. The nonsense that comes out of the United States, out of the government and out of the leftist media, and now even people on the right, is unbelievable. We wouldn't even put up with one rocket. And what they're demanding of Israel, there's no way Israel can. And you know what? Quite frankly, John, I also believe what Israel's going through with Hamas right now, and the propaganda that is against Israel, is strengthening the people of Israel and their leadership. Yeah, they got problems. Netanyahu and Gantz, get that. But there's a strengthening that's happened. So when they have to go to Hezbollah, that's like, look, we've already put up with you guys hating us when we were in the south. We're not going to put up, we're going to go, and we got to deal with Hezbollah. So we know that Israel has to grow towards that direction because of Isaiah 17. So I see that happening, not across the board with government, not across the board with their media, but there's a certain resolve with certain Israelis that are willing to do something that no other people are willing to do when they're shouted down.
That's correct. I mean, and then we talk about the Samson option. In fact, I was just looking today at a old article. It's at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. It was written in 1996. And I'm not making this up, okay? This is the title of the article, Israel and Samson. some tenuously biblical reflections on strategy.
Hmm.
And the first part of it is Israel may learn from Samson not to die with the Philistines, but to live despite its enemies. And the first thing that it says is taking hold of the temple pillars. So it refers back to the Samson story where he went between the pillars of the temple in Gaza and took care of the problem. And so the Samson option is not to die like Samson, it's to take care of your enemies without dying like Samson. That's what and so there, I mean, I think it was the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. I saw a pretty good article back in March on the Samson option, that this may be our only thing. So I think Amir on his Telegram channel the other day said that they were evacuating schools in the north because they're still in school in Israel till the end of June. And so they were emptying the schools out because of what's going on up there. And when I asked Avraham Levine, probably 2 months ago, the last time I interviewed him, what happens if this war breaks out? You know what he said to me? Now, this is a guy, 45, IDF reserve, served in Gaza, director of research or something for Alma, 8 children, Orthodox Jewish guy, lives in the Golan 1 mile from the Syrian border. He said, no child will go to school in Israel for at least a year.
Wow. In Israel, not just
I
north.
said, all of Israel, because of the rocket threat that can reach all the way to Eilat.
Wow.
And so I'm just saying is we want to kind of jump to the end, but there's this painful thing in the middle that I think we need to talk about. And I'm concerned about it. I mean, it's very sobering when you talk to Zarit Zahavi, Avraham Levine, and people that live up there in the north that know what's going on, that have been studying the Hezbollah problem and talking about it. So much so, by the way, Zarit Zahavi, they actually did like Hezbollah did a 4-minute video on her about how terrible a person she is because she's getting under their skin. So you need to pray for her because she's really, go to her website because there's graphics and stuff all over there to show you what they mean. The tunnels dug in southern Lebanon are exact copies of tunnels dug in Korea, in North Korea. That's who's digging them. That's where they're getting the technology. There is an axis of evil that works. And so I don't want to be too negative about it because I know the end of the story, but there's a bumpy road between here and there.
It's very, well, John, also when we look at Israel's history, both biblical and secular, well, you can look at Masada. Here's a fact. So Israel says we're all going to die, therefore, So when this is not something that's new to Israel. We live in a different generation. We have different technology. The weapons are different, but Israel has always been in this position, and we know until the Messiah comes back, this is only going to increase for Israel. And I firmly believe that God is using this. What's happening right now, God is turning his attention again towards Israel. We see the Gentile world. We can see it in the churches. What's happening, they're not even wanting the Bible. They're definitely not pro-Israel. And we're not speaking about every single church, but by far the majority are this way. And God appears to be turning from the attention from the Gentile world to Israel, and he's bringing Israel, Daniel chapter 12, we aren't in the tribulation yet, but he's bringing them to that place. And Daniel chapter 12 says he will crush the power of the holy people in the process of bringing them to him. Mm-hmm. And that's talking about Israel going through pain and suffering in purpose of bringing them to the place of recognizing Yeshua, the Messiah. And I believe we are experiencing this turning point in world history, and I don't just mean American history, world history, from the time of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and the salvation that is coming to Israel.
But what does this mean for us, Tom? Because look at what is going on. The whole world has turned against Israel, and our government is actively trying to overthrow the government of Israel, the United States government.
Right.
This charade in the UN, this is to get Bibi out of office. And I don't care whether you like Bibi or not. Okay, that's not the issue. But they portray everybody on the far right as these extremists, and they actually want the ashes of the red heifer and that type of thing. But so you look at a guy like Ben-Gvir. Everybody, it's the easiest thing in the world to do today is to hate Ben-Gvir. And his point is we should go not defeat Hamas, we should go occupy Gaza. Make Gaza Jewish, I think is one of their phrases that the people on the right in Israel are using. And I'm a practical guy. I know there's all kinds of problems. The world will hate that. But I'm just asking you is, how do you live next to these people? How do you live next to a physician, a place where the physicians are actively holding hostages? How do you do that? And, and I think the goal of some people in Israel is to get them to go up and move away. Now, nobody wants to talk about that. But when Netanyahu uses the analogy to Amalek, how can I tell him that he's wrong and crazy for saying that?
Yeah,
I
no
can't
kidding.
do that.
No kidding. I mean, I look at this, and I'm going to be starting a series on the life of David pretty soon. So I get to deal with Amalek. I get to deal with all these things. What's really interesting, John, I mean, you know this well. It's like I'm telling the choir, but you know it well. I mean, you look at the life of David from Saul, all the things that goes wrong, Israel's real beginning at that point in the sense of a nation and a kingdom in that regard. And you follow it and you go, wow, you see all the dynamics, the Philistines, the Amaleks, you see all the dynamics today. And so I don't care what anybody says about it. These things really are happening. They've never gone away. In fact, when we look at Israel's history, what do you have? You have here's where Israel's problem was in their ancient past. The area of Gaza, Judea and Samaria, both Babylon came in, and so did Assyria because God sent them in. Then God dealt with Babylon and Assyria. And what else? Where Dan relocates in the Golan, up north. And you start looking at everything and going, wait a minute, the 4 areas where Israel had a problem in their ancient history, God is saying, no, we're still dealing with this. We're still dealing with Amalek. We're still dealing with this Philistine mentality. We still have Ashdod, Ashkelon. We still have Ekron. We still have these cities with the same names. You can't make that stuff up. It's really remarkable. God is dealing with it, but God is bringing Israel through pain, a lot of pain. More pain's coming, but they will be victorious in the end. But man, it's going to be painful getting there.
But I've been up to Shem and Nablus, and go read the story about what happened at Shem. And we're sort of going through a repeat of that now. I mean, Nablus is one of the worst terror centers in Samaria, sometimes called part of the West Bank. I don't know. I mean, look, what was Samuel's solution? The prophet Samuel.
Let's hack him up.
Agag, by the way, which I think you could also translate as Gog, by the way. I think that's a proper translation. He hacked Agag to pieces at, where was that, Gilgal? Yeah. Or someplace up there in northern Israel.
Why do I still hear bleeding, Saul? Anyways, sorry, I don't mean to keep going.
No, I mean, it's a lot going on. So you want to talk about U.S. a little bit, because I think, this is maybe more Bill Koenig's bailiwick, but I think we can pretend a little bit here. And he can clean up the mess later, but we're doing this in the UN to Israel. At the same time, we're getting these extreme severe threats from Russia about using nuclear weapons. And, now they've got a nuclear missile sub and a destroyer or something visiting Cuba. So it's sort of another Cuban missile crisis. And I don't know where we cross the line with Putin, whether we have or not. But he keeps threatening these things. China's threatening Taiwan. I think Biden came out today and said, well, we'll take care of Taiwan. Okay. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, no, okay. How are we going to do that? I think what these leaders, these evil leaders know is we have such an inept government. We're so divided. We have so many problems, regardless of what the reason is, deep state or whatever, regardless of that. We have a military that recruits people with their recruiting ads on being transgender. You look, you go, this is what we do in America. What message do you send to the Russians and the Chinese or the North Koreans or or Iran or any terrorist organization? This is who we're looking for in the U.S. military. So, hey, now's the time to strike when I look at it, because, John, when I think about it this way, is let's say Trump does get elected president. Let's just say he doesn't go to jail, he becomes president. Guess what? I remember when Reagan got elected and suddenly Iran released all those hostages.
Mm-hmm.
The dynamic would change. And I'm looking at things going, there's a reason why Russia is moving their ships over to Cuba, no matter what they are saying. There's a reason why you have all of these threats that are going on. I think these countries are probably rejoicing for another 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
I really, I have a lot of trouble wrapping my head around that, him being reelected. I
do too. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think, I do. I think like Newsom is going to end up in there or something like that. That's what I think.
Yeah, but how do you get rid of the perfect DEI candidate, Kamala Harris?
So they'll get rid of her.
She's like if there was a DEI, Miss DEI universal
pageant, she'd be
pageant. She would win in a landslide.
Yes,
well, the only thing she isn't is transgender, as far as we know.
So I just have a hard time thinking there's any chance of Trump being elected, regardless of what anybody's thought is on Trump. I'm not talking about that. It's just looking at the state of our country and this world and how did we get here? We understand the Bible. We know things are going to go this direction. We can see it all shaping up, but it takes human players that are leading the nightmare situation.
And you look at and there's elections everywhere. You have this lunatic down in Mexico. By the way, do you know what they've said about her? She is the greatest climate scientist ever to be elected to high office in the world.
I didn't hear that one. I just heard about all the other insane stuff. The greatest climate. In other words, she's the greatest.
She was in like environmental engineering was her scientific expertise and climate science.
So the perfect person to use to promote the agenda.
Tom, it's insane. If you go to Al-Manar website, which is a Hezbollah media site, just like Al Akbar newspaper in Lebanon, they have pictures of all of the guys, Hezbollah guys who've been killed since October 8th. It's like 330 now. By the way, is IDF 10, Hezbollah 330. But to them, that's great. They go to paradise. But a couple of the guys, I'm looking through their bios. Do you know what the one guy had a PhD in that was killed?
No.
He had a PhD in missile targeting from the University of Lebanon.
Wow.
I didn't even know that was a field of study.
Well, apparently it is in Lebanon. Wow.
In Lebanon, university.
Man, this is nuts. Okay, John.
It's insane.
So
we could go for 80 hours here, I think.
I think we need some hope. So you got your program. It's going to be Wednesday night. on your
Wednesday night
channel.
at 9 p.m.
9 p.m. I'll be on there with you. I'm curious. I really wanted to ask you about Amir Avivi. I still follow him, but we don't really have enough time to get into some of the things he has to say, unless you have some closing thoughts from Amir.
Well,
Avivi.
I think Amir was quoted in the Washington Post or someplace yesterday about this was a phenomenal operation to rescue these guys. Amir Avivi is head of the Israeli Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. We've interviewed him together. You've interviewed him, and I did some work with them early on as they were kind of trying to increase a couple of years ago. Oh man, Tom, it's hard to keep up with, and you've got the political situation in Israel. Gantz and Eisenkot and Gallant may be leaving the war cabinet soon, but I don't think they're going to elections soon. And by the way, people need to understand, for all the trouble internally, we see all the trouble politically in Israel, 75-80% of Israelis say, go beat and defeat and eradicate Hamas. So Israel's very unified. It's just the crazies on the left that want to destroy the government that don't care about Israel or that aren't Zionists that do it. Yeah. So listen, I know that everything works out in the end, but I'm a realist. I know there's a lot of pain in between now and then. And I just think that we got to continually point people to Jesus.
Amen.
The Jesus that's coming back is not some Hindu guru running around throwing, flowers and peace and love and stuff. He's coming back to execute justice. And it's interesting, and I think we talked about this, the saints that are there under the throne in the fifth seal. These are redeemed people of God, right? They're on board with the program that maybe we aren't on board with yet. Lord, come and avenge us. And so I think we need to get on board with that. But I'm very hopeful. I like what Brandon, I like what Olivier and other groups are doing to kind of minister to the Israeli Jewish people at this time and help them out. I think that's a very effective tool right now. So we need to get on board with those programs.
Amen. I love it. Thank you, John. And our hope is in the Lord Jesus Christ only, and everything is happening. We know the Bible tells us it's going to go this way, but likewise, John, I would say the same thing. We need to be on board, put into practice Matthew chapter 25, where we minister to those who are Jews. No matter how much anti-Semitism comes your way from these lies that are out there, and they are everywhere. Listen, again, I'll be having Shay on Monday from Got Questions. It's going to be over the top. First time ever. Shay, the founder of Got Questions, join me. I'm going to do a prophecy update Sunday night. And again, Wednesday, that's tomorrow night, for those of you who are watching this on Tuesday, join me. I'll be on John Haller's program with Francisco Gil-White. I've never met him. Looking forward to that. I'm going to be reading a lot about him in the next 20 hours or so.
Interesting guy. I think you'll be interested in Google his name, look him up. He's done some interviews on the Nazis and the Hajjman al-Husseini and that type of thing. So we'll probably focus on the Palestinian Authority and Fatah history.
Oh, great. I'm looking very forward to it. Fantastic. Thanks, John. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Tom.
All right. Bye, everyone.